So pleased to welcome back the good doctor himself, Dr. Guy McPHERSON, Professor Emeritus from University of Arizona. Guy needs no introduction at all to this crowd, so just welcome to the show, guys. So glad to have you here.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Great to chat with you again today. Guy, you brought my attention to two essays you have written this year. One this last month, February 9th, 2017. It's an essay entitled Faster Than Expected. So I'd like to talk about that one, and then if we have some time, I'd like to talk about another one that you've written, The Politics and Science of Our Demise. But since this is actually the most current one, let's go ahead and dive into Faster Than Expected. And you are known as the Doctor of Doom. This is nothing new to any of us that follow you. But this essay is particularly bleak, and I was wondering if you'd just like to dive into the salient points.
Well, basically, the notion is that once we have a significant eruption of methane from the Arctic seafloor, which seems fairly likely to me, given that we are headed for a summer with very little ice cover in the Arctic, and perhaps none, then we will have the 1.3 degrees Celsius rise in global average temperature that Natalia Shakova and colleagues described in their presentation, their abstract and their presentation at the European Geophysical Union meetings in 2008. And that's when they first wrote about this 50 gigaton burst of methane. Later, interestingly, in an interview, Natalia Shakova herself lied about the earlier statement. She said that the group, when she actually could have retracted the statement, she said, quote, "We never stated that 50 gigatons is likely to be released in near or distant future." And actually what they wrote at the European Geophysical Union meeting is, quote, "We consider release of up to 50 gigatons of predicted amount of methane storage is highly possible for abrupt release at any time," end quote. And it's really important here to focus on highly possible for abrupt release at any time. That statement was made at the 2008 European Geophysical Union annual meeting. Well, it's been nearly a decade now, and that abrupt release at any time has not occurred yet. I don't see how we avoid it if we have an ice-free Arctic, and it appears that we're headed that way as early as later this year.
It does. I also have been keeping my eye close on the Arctic sea ice, and I also saw the video where she did speak about this, Natalia Shakova with Igor Semiletov, and they did talk in some banter between them, and Igor Semiletov was even more dire than Natalia Shakova, and it's just stunning. It means that they have received significant external pressure for them to go ahead and retract a statement like that. And I assume you think so too?
Well, yeah, and it's important here to point out there was no retraction. They didn't retract. They could have retracted, and that was my point. They could have retracted, but they did not. Instead, she lied about it. She didn't say that the research group reached a different conclusion. She said, "We never stated." That's key here. We never stated that 50 gigatons is likely to be released.
Curiouser and curiouser, it does appear like we're in some sort of 1984 reality where we just have to change what reality resembles on a dime depending on who's saying it. I find that very puzzling, Guy. I really do. It's not actually very comforting at all.
No, it's absurd. I mean, when you have an accomplished field researcher such as Natalia Shakova, and as you mentioned, her partner Igor Semiletov, when she is denying a statement that an entire research group made 9 years earlier, that's very disturbing to me. That's an indication that they are under extreme pressure, or that, well, I can't even imagine another situation. Is she worried about losing her job? Is she worried?
I
about
wouldn't,
keeping
I
the
don't
light.
know. I mean, it could be that, but it could be, I mean, I know she works for the University of Alaska at Fairbanks or something like that. Isn't that correct? Does she still work there?
Yeah, as far as I know, she does. I've written to her a few times. I've never received a response.
Mm.
This goes back probably 4 years since I've been trying to contact her. So I don't know where she is
Well,
because the email
people
messages I
receive
send.
external pressure in various ways. I mean, it could be something as simple as my university has told me no, which could happen, but it could be also, I mean, consider her nationality is Russian, and both she and her partner are Russian. They could have been receiving pressure directly from Russia in various ways, as we know that's done.
Right, absolutely. I still think it's very, very strange. I think she could have retracted. She could have said, me and my research group have decided that our earlier estimate was extreme and uncalled for, not supported by evidence, but she didn't do that. Instead, she came right out and lied about it. She could have retracted, instead she lied.
Hmm.
I think that's very odd.
I
I
do
don't
too. I
understand
don't even really know what to say about it. I'm just kind of puzzled.
if she was getting pressure, it seems like that would have been a further case, further evidence for her to issue a retraction. Then there would have been no questions asked. But she didn't issue a retraction. That brings a lot of questions to my mind about what's really going on behind the scenes.
It does. It really does. But she made some stunning claims, and I'd like to find out, in your experience, going through all the referee journal literature and all things like that, have other scientists, Arctic-oriented scientists, come forward and talked about it? Do you know of others who have talked about this? And can you talk to us about the methane plumes and how big they are and what we can expect?
Yeah, and you have to bear in mind that Shakova and Peter Wadhams are probably the premier authorities when it comes to field research in the Arctic region. Wadhams has made more than 50 expeditions above and below the Arctic ice. Shakova and colleagues have been there at least a dozen times as well, spanning 2 decades. So these are people who are actually out there and know what is happening out there, not to be confused with modelers or part-time graduate students, part-time faculty members who rarely venture from the sidewalk and who are reluctant to point out that their models have been too inadequate so far.
Exactly. And there's no substitute for field study. When you take the methane readings yourself, when you see the crust falling into the sea in Siberia, when all infrastructure is being ripped up and torn up, and then you see in the Yamal Peninsula these methane blowholes, and I know there are a few of those. I mean, you can see that things are falling apart, and it is not reflected in the models, and I am so frustrated by that. People who just so religiously hold to their models as if they're God's gift, and I'm sure there's a huge amount of intelligence in there, but they're not taking into consideration the polynomial trendline nature of climate change and all the interlocking feedbacks. Don't you feel the same way?
Yes, of course. I mean, we have people like who took over James Hansen's position. We have people like David Archer at the University of Chicago, and those folks are modelers. And when the observations don't match the models, they think there's something wrong with the observations. It doesn't work that way, folks. That's not the way science proceeds. And Gavin Schmidt went on a personal campaign to attack Shakova and colleagues at a meeting she was not invited to attend. I think that tells us a lot about his character. So there clearly are people who are well respected in the field, Gavin Schmidt and David Archer come immediately to mind, who are pushing back against field researchers based on little or no evidence of their own, other than trying to force the observations to fit into the extremely conservative models. This is maddening for a field biologist like myself, who spent 25 years, 30 years kicking around in the field with a shovel and actually studying what happens to plants and non-human animals in response to their environment. This is extremely disappointing and maddening, and it's just all part of the lies my culture tells me, basically, that everything's going to be all right forever and there's nothing to worry about.
It's the biggest fable ever perpetuated upon us. It's such a falsehood, and we see it falling apart before our very eyes.
Oh, why
I'd like to take a look at this article that you wrote and talk about the Earth's climate sensitivity and how the Earth's climate is more sensitive than previously understood, and why you think that our time is short, and how you envision the interlocking feedbacks that all interact together and tipping points within the Earth's ecosystem. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, people frequently write or say that my evidence depends upon an abrupt release of methane. And I do quote Shikova and colleagues for their 2008 paper at the European Geophysical Union meetings. But we can basically leave all methane from the subsea Arctic out of the picture, and we're still headed well beyond a temperature at which humans will persist on this planet. We've had humans at about 2 degrees Celsius above baseline, according to James Hansen in a legal brief from 2015. That's the highest temperature above the 1750 baseline that has harbored humans on Earth in the past, according to the grandfather of climate science. Well, once we lose global dimming as a result of the demise of the set of living arrangements, we'll add about 3 degrees C within a matter of a few days. And this gets to a central point. Many people, most notably modelers, including the 2 I already mentioned, inadvertently, incorrectly believe that the climate sensitivity is quite low. And that's not the case. There is a lot of research that has come out within the last half a decade indicating that the Earth is extremely climate sensitive. One minor example comes from more than 15 years ago, when United States planes stopped flying as a result of the events of 9/11. On September 14th, a field researcher pondered the question, hey, I wonder if, because United States planes stopped flying, there's been a change in the global average temperature signature of the planet. And so he actually went out there and measured it. And 3 days after 9/11, when essentially nothing changed with respect to industrial civilization except that United States planes were grounded. Bear in mind, we were still burning coal. Bear in mind that flights were going and coming elsewhere around the world. Bear in mind that industrial civilization was proceeding apace with this relatively minor exception. And 3 days later, there was a significant difference in the global average temperature signature of the planet than there was on 9/11. This is stunning. That's how it was 3 days after the plane stopped flying from the United States. And interestingly, the data were not collected and presented, or at least were not presented in a way that allows us to determine what the exact temperature rise was. Instead, they measured the variation, the diurnal variation in temperature changed 1 degree C. So that might have been a 1 degree C temperature increase. It might have been 1 degree C temperature decrease. I suspect it's probably a little bit of both, that because of the absence of contrails, which act much like clouds, the absence of clouds, of course, makes it cooler at night and warmer during the day. So I suspect that's what happened, but we'll never know because the data were not presented in a manner that allows us to tell that. The central key point here, though, is that there was a significant alteration, a significant change.
And quickly, that's the other thing.
Exactly. That's the big thing. How quickly the temperature variation of the Earth changed. Not whether it went up or down, although I suspect it did both, and we'll never really know, but that it changed so very rapidly in response to a relatively minor change in industrial civilization. So imagine when the whole house of cards comes down, which it would in response to a 50 gigaton burst of methane, or even one much smaller than that, because that would take us beyond the point at which we are able to grow grain at scale on the planet. And the growing of grains is absolutely pivotal to this version of civilization. as it was for every previous version of civilization. So if we can't grow grains and distribute grains at scale, that means we don't have food on the grocery store shelves, and that doesn't bode well for a civilization that depends upon food on the store.
It doesn't at all. I mean, when you do not have food on the shelves, effectively you enter into immediate chaos, and that would kind of, be some sort of signal that the fall of civilization is at hand within about 3 days. I mean, there's just no buffer built in the system. The system is a lot more fragile. This house of cards that we've so magnificently erected could come crashing down around us, and it's almost a miracle that it hasn't thus far. But
Saw the world turning in my sheets, and once again I cannot sleep. Walk out the door and up the street, look at the stars beneath my feet, remember rights that I did wrong. So here I go, hello, hello. There is no place I cannot go. My mind is muddy, but my heart is heavy, does it show? I lose the track that loses me. So here I go. And so I sent some men to fight, and one came back at dead of night. Said he'd seen my enemy, said he looked just like me. So I set out to cut myself, and here I go. I'm not calling for a second chance. I'm screaming at the top of my voice. Give me reason, but don't give me choice, 'cause I'll just make the same mistake again. Someday we will meet, and maybe talk and not just speak. Don't buy the promises, 'cause there are no promises I keep, and my reflection troubles me. So here I go. I'll just make the same mistake. I'm not calling for a second chance. I'm screaming at the top of my voice. Give me reason, but don't give me choice, 'cause I'll just make the same mistake again. So the world turning in my sheets.
let's go ahead and turn. We've already kind of started to get into your article, your essay called "The Politics and Science of Our Demise." You wrote this on August 1st, 2016, so actually it was last year. And I would like to kind of subtitle this article as "Do the Math," or even "Do the Math Stupid." This is a really interesting article, and you highlight a lot of Sam Carana's work where he does the math to get to the magic number of 10C of potential global temperature rise by 2026. Would you like to kind of get nitty and gritty and we can kind of do the math? We've already talked about global dimming. That's 2.5 degrees right there that they estimate will be temperature added into the atmosphere when the planes stop flying, because we're masking the full effect of what it would be have if we didn't have that masking effect with global dimming. So that's 2.5 right there. How about the albedo changes? How severe do you rate those? Do you think that that's going to add a lot? And how do you see all those types of things interacting with the albedo changes and the seafloor methane?
Right, so let's back up for a second first and focus on that 2.5C as a result of the absence of the aerosol effect or global dimming. And that's an incredibly conservative conclusion, 2.5C. The incredibly conservative refereed journal literature indicates about 3C, not 2.5C. And so when I take Carana's analysis, which is generally very good, I point out that it's also very conservative. It is, in a couple of cases, more conservative than the refereed journal literature. And we know how incredibly conservative the refereed journal literature is because of a variety of reasons. But so Carana concludes 2.5 degrees C temperature increase from removal of the aerosol masking effect or global dimming. I think it's probably closer to 3 and maybe higher than that, because again, the journal literature is so conservative that it might well be considerably above 3 degrees C. But then there's more, of course. And this analysis, as you indicated, was done about 7 months ago. Albedo changes in the Arctic, based on Peter Wadham's research, again a field researcher, indicates about a 1.5 degrees Celsius global average temperature rise within the next decade. Now, interestingly, since then, that was based on work in 2012, and since then, Wadhams has come out and said that he expects, in light of an ice-free Arctic, he expects quite a bit higher rise in temperature than that 1.6 degrees C over the span of the next decade. He is more conservative than Chikova with respect to the specific bursts of methane that will arise, but he also points out quite clearly, I think, and most notably in his recent book, that we cannot have an ice-free Arctic without triggering two primary triggers with respect to global average temperature rise. First, the albedo change in the Arctic when we get rid of the white and go strictly to deep blue. And secondly, that methane release that is relatively shallow beneath the seafloor in the Arctic. You put those together, and I just can't see that in a decade we'll have less than a 5 degree rise from those two factors alone, and they very conservatively will come up to Chikova and Wadham's conservatively come up with about 3 degrees. But it's easy to imagine it being higher than that. Again, I side with the very conservative analysis at every step here. Seafloor methane release, albedo changes, it all looks truly catastrophically horrible. And not just for humans, by the way, because we're talking about an abrupt rise in global average temperature that is already leaving behind many species. We're in the midst of the sixth mass extinction. A paper from about 4 years ago, again in the refereed journal literature, indicates that vertebrates are failing to keep up with changes in global average temperature by a factor of 10,000 times. 10,000 times too slow.
change what's been and gone. May your smile shine on. Don't be scared. Your destiny may keep you warm. 'Cause all of the stars have faded away. Just try not to worry, you'll see them someday. Take what you need and be on your way, and stop crying your heart out. Get up, come on. Why you scared? Never change what's been and gone. 'Cause all of the stars have faded away. Just try not to worry, you'll see them someday. Take what you need and be on your way, and stop crying your heart out. Cause all of the stars have faded away. Just try not to worry, you'll see them someday. Just take what you need and be on your way, and stop crying your heart out. Where all of the stars were fading away. Just try not to worry, you'll see us someday. Just take what you need and be on your way, and stop crying your heart out. Stop crying your heart out. Stop crying your heart out. Stop crying your heart
So we're at the cusp. We're at the very beginning of abrupt climate change, and it's not going to get any better. We're in the early stages of that exponential rise in global average temperature, and to believe somehow that we are going to weather this particular storm seems rather absurd to me.
I quite agree. And additionally, there's another feedback that we haven't really even addressed that's really going to compound the issue, and that is the extra water vapor feedback. And as the atmosphere gets hotter, it can hold more water, and it will hold more water, and there will be more energy within the atmosphere along with the more water causing greater heat, the more energy causing greater hurricanes. I think we can expect some very, very powerful storms, that and the extreme melting going on in both Greenland and Antarctica at this time, raising the sea level altogether with the energy in the atmosphere. There can be some really, really strong storms, and we will see places overtopped. Do you talk to me about what storms you see and things like that?
Well, I think the system of categorizing hurricanes up to a Category 5 is about to be behind us. I think we're facing the storms of my grandchildren. James Hansen warned about in his 2007 book with that title. That the notion of Category 3 and Category 4 hurricanes striking every 50 or 100 years on each of the continents, that's ludicrous. I think that those days are behind us. Interestingly, about 2 weeks after I moved here to Belize, we experienced a Category 1 storm that the eye went right over the top of us, and it was truly terrifying. Trying to sleep at night when there's the windows are shaking on the house and the wind is literally howling outside, and that's a Category 1. And it's difficult to even imagine the power of a Category 4, a Category 5 storm, much less the storms of my grandchildren that James Hansen warns about, that will devastate everything in their path. It only takes a half a meter or maybe a 1 meter global average rise in sea level, or even regional rise in sea level on the eastern seaboard, before a relatively mundane tropical storm floods Washington, D.C., floods the mall at Washington, D.C. So it doesn't take much sea level rise with a subsequent storm to wreak all kinds of havoc on people who live within a couple of 100 miles of the ocean, which is, by the way, half the people on the planet. So half the people on the planet live within a couple of 100 miles of the ocean. And the ocean, to quote the words of the song by Afrozen, Nature Bats Last, she's going to get you. And he was talking about nature generally. But in this case, it looks like the ocean is the wolf at the door, the proverbial wolf at the door. The actual wolf at the door is nothing compared to the greater forces associated with physics. Let's back up just a little bit. Each 1 degree Celsius rise in global average temperature adds about 7% more water vapor to the atmosphere. More than 90% of that water vapor is held within the troposphere. The upper troposphere in particular harbors most of the moisture, and there's a self-reinforcing feedback loop there. The wetter it gets in the upper troposphere, the more humid it gets, the warmer the upper troposphere acts. And so water vapor is the most abundant greenhouse gas by far. Add a little bit of water vapor to the upper troposphere, that warms the planet. Warming the planet causes the evaporation of more water, which goes into the upper troposphere, almost all of it. And so that's a classic self-reinforcing feedback loop. Of the approximately 1.6 degrees Celsius above baseline that we're looking at right now that has already occurred, roughly half of that is due to burning carbon through fossil fuels, and the other half is due to moistening of the upper troposphere. The equilibrium time between moistening the upper troposphere and global average temperature is a matter of days, maybe weeks. So it's a very, very fast feedback. So every 1 degree we add in terms of burning fossil fuels adds another degree in terms of water vapor. So that alone locks us into above 2 degrees C. Carbon and moistening the upper troposphere locks us into more than 2 degrees C in less than 9 years from now. Because there's a 10-year lag between maximum heating and the release of carbon dioxide that produces that heat. So every single thing, to me, points in the absolutely wrong direction for continued persistence of our favorite species on this planet.
I quite agree, and I wish I didn't. I really wish I didn't see what you're saying, but unfortunately I do. And according to your estimates and others, and Sam Carana's estimates, it looks like we're going to have over 10 degrees of heating, should all these interlocking feedbacks play out, and I don't see why they wouldn't, because that's the way they are physically, they work together. By 2026, not 10 years from now. So, we look around and everything still looks sort of normal. I mean, you can kind of hypnotize yourself into the thought that nothing much really is going on and that it's just all a bunch of alarmists. But it's going to happen. The exponential nature of climate change is what is actually so scary. And it's that polynomial trend line, that darned polynomial trend line that, climate and everything else that's breaking down in our ecosphere finds itself on. And we are just at the point where it's going to become very noticeable very fast. Can you speak to us a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, the United Nations Advisory Group on Greenhouse Gases indicated in October of 1990 that 1 degree Celsius was the absolute upper limit beyond which we could not cross. This is the scientific target. The 2 degrees C, the political target that we've heard so much about in the years since 1990, 27 years ago, is strictly that, a political target. 2 degrees C is a non-target. We have already triggered myriad self-reinforcing feedback loops as a result of a global average temperature rise of 1 degree C. In fact, it appears that the Clathrate gun, the exponential rise of methane from the Arctic subsea floor, was triggered in approximately 2007. Even without that, by the way, even without that rise in methane from the Arctic seafloor, we're still facing a global average rise in temperature over the course of the next decade, well beyond that which will harbor humans. We don't know, obviously, with certainty when humans will go extinct, what global average temperature will cause that extinction. But we do know that humans rely upon hundreds of thousands, probably millions of other species for our own survival, in the form of food and the ability to clean water. We don't clean water by ourselves. In cities, we think that technology has a lot to do with clean water, and in cities it does. But for the most part, the water that we drink, even in the cities, gets to those cities in a relatively clean manner as a result of the non-human organisms that are out there doing an enormous amount of work for us. So if we really value clean air and clean water and food to eat and pollinators to provide that food, and the list goes on and on and on, then we might want to think about the non-human organisms that actually run the show, that actually have provided for us a garden, the Garden of Eden, for thousands of years. And instead of treating each one of those species as a resource, something to be monetized, something to be labeled and categorized so that we can benefit more directly from it, perhaps we should treat them as our brethren instead of as resources to be exploited. That might help. I think it's a little late for that. I still think it might help in terms of demonstrating ourselves as better beings than I frequently observe when I'm carrying out my day-to-day activities.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the years and the slow parade of fears without crying. Now I want to understand. I have done all that I could to see the evil and the good without hiding. You must help me if you can. Doctor, my eyes, tell me what is wrong. Was I unwise to leave them open for so long? unfurled. I've been waiting to awaken from these dreams. People go just where they will. I never noticed them until I got this feeling that it's later than it seems. Doctor, my eyes, tell me what you see. I hear their cries. Just say if it's too late for me. Doctor, my eyes, they cannot see the sky. Is this the price for having learned how not to cry?
How does this make you all feel? It's just all so dire. How do you keep going day after day and stay sane in light of all this very distressing information, Guy?
Well, you claim I'm saying, from what I've seen on the internet, that's not even close to true. So, as an attorney might say in a court of law, assumes facts not in evidence. But what keeps me going, I sometimes think of William James, the pragmatic American philosopher who died right after writing his last essay, which was called The Moral Equivalent of War. And he suggested fighting nature as the moral equivalent of war. He wrote that humans are a warlike species. We are going to kill each other. Bear in mind, this is shortly before World War in 1914. So this is 1911. The smoke from the Great Idaho Fire is going over his cabin in New Hampshire, and he writes the moral equivalent of war in response to that and other fires, and says we need to battle nature with the moral equivalent of war. We need to stamp it out and harness it to our needs, to our bidding. And yet, in another place, William James wrote that he asked himself the same question every day: why should I get out of bed? Because he was so plagued by what he knew about the set of living arrangements in which he was embroiled. How do I get out of bed? Well, for me, I have this syndrome called TB. Perhaps you've heard of it. It stands for tiny bladder. And it forces me to get out of bed in the morning before I really know I'm up. So I'm up and carrying out my daily morning function before I even realize I'm up. So I don't even have to ask the question, why do I get up in the morning? I get up in the morning to urinate. That's why I get up. That's too much information? I'm sorry. I'm the truth teller guy. I just can't stop myself sometimes. And to answer your question seriously, if I could, for just a minute, Jennifer.
Okay, I would like to get it because there are a lot of people thinking about this stuff, and yeah, we all have tiny bladders, but it's bizarre, and I find myself contending with it in various ways, and it depends which part of the 5 steps of grief I'm in that day, how I handle it. And I just keep kind of bouncing around back and forth, and some days I kind of block it out and it's in a certain sort of way, and then the next day I'm just like mourning the death of our glorious earth and at loss for thoughts, words, and emotions how this could be happening, and it's kind of like I bounce around in all these things, and I don't know that I've actually worked through anything, but I do react to it.
Well, the ancients pointed out that we were never promised another day. Homer wrote about that in the Iliad. And I try to keep that in mind, that every day upright is something of a miracle in and of itself, that we actually get to be here. And not only that, we get to be here at the most amazing point in human history, the end. And I think of the words of Stephen Jay Gould in his book Wonderful Life, published not long before he died. The Harvard professor wrote, "May our poor and improbable species find joy in its newfound fragility and good fortune!" Exclamation mark. And that's right. May our poor and improbable species, and I would say the individuals within that species, find joy in its newfound fragility. And what he's talking about here, newfound fragility and good fortune, it was pointed out in the study of the Burgess Shale, which is the focus of his book, Wonderful Life, that apparently we're nothing short of an accident, that it's only through good fortune that we manage to show up at all as a species. And we're incredibly fragile as a species because we depend upon so many other species for our own existence. So may our poor and improbable species find joy. And I would say for individuals that it's more likely that joy finds us. I've tried to find joy in my life, and I must say that by looking for it, I essentially never find it. Occasionally it finds me, and I find myself stunningly grateful when that occurs. And that's my advice for other people as well, is that when joy finds you, you recognize it for what it is. You soak in the moment. You take advantage of the fact that we get to be here at all. And you act with gratitude towards the other individuals, human and non-human, in your life that make this improbable existence occur at all. That's a lot. That's a lot to be grateful for. The mantra of civilization, this one and all previous civilizations, might well have been must go faster or get more. And my mantra is, at the edge of extinction, only love remains. Let it be enough. We get air, we get water, we get food, we get to sleep, we get to spend a few days upright, maybe even a few thousands of days upright. You want more? Do you want everything? That's how we got here, by the way, on the edge of extinction, is by people wanting everything. Let's love what we have. Let's love what we are. Let's love those around us.
So agreed. This is our moment to witness this. We are here at this moment, and it is our gift to be awake and to be able to emotionally respond in an informed and deep way with our fellow human beings. So, it has been a huge pleasure to have you on here to Extinction Radio, this segment.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's a pleasure, as always, to chat with you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Tell me your politics.
strength and self-control.